All right. Well, if we've got a few people, we'll go ahead and get started and just kind of build in as we go. Can everybody hear okay? Anybody having any issues? All right, thumbs up. All right, well let's try this. I guess I want to do a couple of announcements first before we go too far. The devotional series that we've started is we kicked that off last week on Sunday evening, and that went really well. We had 21 people that were there with us, and we had a few come and go, but 21 was the count that Carrie got, so that was good. That's going to continue every second and fourth Sunday. We're going to get together after church, and that's a youth group thing, but it's not just exclusively a youth group thing. So if that's something that you want to go to, that you want to be involved with the teens, then feel free. You're more than welcome to come and join us. We are going to try to get it to where we have it at other places. Right now, if everything goes like it's scheduled, we're going to have the next one on the fourth Sunday of this month will be at our house. Then the following one, the second Sunday in October, will be at Jared and Karen's. And then we have an opening from then on, well, through the rest of the year. So hopefully we can get some more people to sign up to host that. There is a sign-up sheet in the foyer in the new building. So that's something we're trying to keep it outside so that it's as, virus friendly as possible, because the virus doesn't like it outside. So we're going to do that. And the goal is to just spend some time together, have a short devotional thought. We can play a game that goes with it. We can just hang out. We can sing. We can whatever it is that you want to do, so that we can provide just this environment for the teens to spend time together. We want to have that. That's kind of what we're missing more than anything. So that's what's going on as far as youth group events go. The videos are, as far as the class goes, going to be posted on our YouTube channel the following day. So I'll try to get that edited and then up tomorrow. So if you know anybody that wasn't able to be here, and I've talked to a few, make sure and let them know, or if they you think it might be beneficial, feel free to share that with them. But also I want to ask that you do try to take time before the classes each week, go through and read through the material and try and think through how you can have a discussion based on that, because the goal of this class was to be really a discussion class. It's best if we have our parents and our teens all in one spot sitting together so that we can really have more of a conversation. So I don't want to lecture. I want to kind of carry on a discussion. So hopefully we can do more of that this week than we did last week. So if you've read the chapter, this one was, it was a good chapter, but it was kind of a hard one to truly internalize, because it just hurts when you think about it, honestly. As hard as we try, no matter how much we preach at our kids, no matter how many things we may make them go to, it's not going to change who they are if we're not being who we should be. I mean, the primary influence on a child is going to be his parents. And that's hard, because that means that it's entirely up to us. We're going to have more influence than anybody else. The quote that I put up on Facebook was fairly early on in the chapter, but it said, and I don't remember exactly what it said, but something to the effect of, we can never out-teach in church what you teach at home. So, I mean, ultimately, the example that we give our kids is going to carry so much more weight than all the teaching that we may try to do in the Bible classroom. We want to make sure that we're living the faith that we want our kids to have. And it doesn't necessarily mean that that's a hard and fast rule, that if you don't have the faith that you should, that your kids won't be able to kind of overcome that obstacle. But when they set out to do this study, the number one thing that they found that was going to be beneficial was the involvement of their parents. And it's one of the things that I hear so often. I have parents that aren't really involved in church, and you don't really ever see them, occasionally Sunday mornings, occasionally Sunday evenings. And they come up to me and ask, how can we get our kids more involved in church? And, my number one, obviously I don't want to insult them or be mean to them, but at the same time, I kind of want to say, if you want them to be there, then you should be there first. And that really goes right along with what this chapter was teaching. You have to do it yourself if you expect others to do it as well. So specifically for parents, and this is true for everybody else as well.
So, kind of thinking about this, I'm just trying to think through, like, people I know who have been able to be faithful as teenagers whose parents weren't involved. And, like, I think that is less than 5 people. And, like, Robert, you're one of my 5 on, like, less than 5 on my list. Like, it's just, it really is a very rare kind of thing, especially for teenagers. I mean, I know more people who did not grow up in the church, who came to the church and to Christian and to faith later in life as adults, but, like, in terms of as teenagers.
Jared, you went mute.
I should have gone mute when I think I was done when I went mute. Did I?
Okay.
It was a little before that on mine.
No, you were still talking.
Well, I mean, anyway, like, I know some people who, came to faith later in life as adults, but just in general, talking about and thinking about, like, kids or teenagers who are faithful and active in church whose parents aren't, like, my list is less than 5 without question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so one of the things I underlined in the book, Robert, is the strategy for developing sticky faith families starts by assessing the vibrancy of your own faith. So as parents, grandparents, we've got to constantly self-evaluate and check ourselves to make sure our faith is on par with what we say it is, because our kids see that. And then that kind of ties into the very next thing that it talks about that I underlined, and it said more important than what parents believe is what teenagers perceive that they believe. So again, if parents, grandparents, if we're doing self-evaluation on our faith, it's just as important not only to practice that so our kids can see it and grandkids can see it, but it's what they also perceive that makes a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just isn't enough. They can tell whether it's genuine or not. No matter how hard we try to fool them, they're going to see through that. So one of the questions that came up, I guess, so this question is specifically for parents. How does it make you feel knowing that you're the primary influence on your children's faith? Anybody?
Scary.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's a scary thought. There's a lot of responsibility that comes with that.
But at the same time, for me, it was really, it was number one priority, same as their health, which was ultimately, obviously very important to take care of their health, make sure they're fed, make sure they're nourished school-wise. I guess I never saw past that and expected it from anybody else. You just know, they're your gift from God, and you get 18 years basically. So I don't know, for myself, just solely for myself, um, I didn't look beyond. I am so thankful for the help beyond that we had through our family and through our church, but it was our ultimate responsibility.
Mhm.
And I never saw it any other way.
Yeah,
I didn't send them to the youth group for you to have to discipline. That was not your responsibility. That's my responsibility.
yeah, and honestly, there's some reassurance that we can get from that. If we're going to be the primary influence in our kids' lives, that means that what they get from around them, because most of our kids go to public schools or interact with other kids that are not of the same faith background that we are, and knowing that we're going to be a greater influence than they are can kind of be a little bit of reassurance, really. So, all right, so let's flip
I
it.
mean, this kind of gets though to Mike's big kick he's been on lately. That if as a parent you can't out teach what your kids are getting from other sources, then you aren't much of a parent. That's perhaps the kind of bluntness that only Michael Duncan can get away with in saying from the pulpit. You and I could certainly never get away with it, Robert. But Mike can say it and it comes through. But, I think there is a lot of truth in that at the end of the day, given all the time we have with our kids, if we cannot somehow be a greater influence, then that is a reflection on us as parents.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. And it's kind of like we've gotten lazy in a sense as a culture in general when it comes to parenting. We're too busy, making excuses, and it's everybody else's fault. So I definitely see that. So flipping it around for the teens or anybody else that's not in the parent category, do you think this is accurate? Do you agree with that, even that your parents are a big influence on your faith?
Yeah, so question. If you're not going to participate, I'm going to start pinching.
I can see a couple of faces. Come on, Phil, what do you think?
Lane says yes.
All right, Lane says yes. All right, yep, I can see Lane's face now. That looks like a yes. All right. So Lane says yes. What about Phil? What does Phil say? Okay, well, in that case, I'm just going to assume that you agree, because if I haven't heard anything disagreeing wise, we'll go with that. And that's what the results of the study were.
Focus and pay attention.
Hey, there's a Phil. All right, Phil, what's your thought, dude?
I agree.
You agree? Okay. All right, that was good. I'm glad that you confirmed that. It was worth the wait. All right, so this is one of those things, like it should make us as parents feel kind of empowered that we have the ability to be that influence, but also it comes with a lot of responsibility. And I guess, I keep coming back to the whole Spider-Man thing. With great power comes great responsibility. And that's true as parents, but at the same time, as kids, we need to understand that, we are drawing our influences from our parents. And if your parents aren't the example that they should be, that gives you an opportunity to kind of either cheer them on and go, all right, come on, do the right thing. But also, if you see your parents doing things and they're not living that example that that they should, then you can step back and go, okay, who can I look to draw that faith example from? And that's kind of the road that I went down ultimately. Just because I didn't have that example at home, I tried to find other families in the church that I could look at and pattern after. And that was ultimately what made the difference for me, and why I am different, I guess, why I'm one of Jared's 5 weirdos. So I guess moving on a little bit through some of the discussion points that I have, Like, it's not so much about who we think we are, because, I mean, at the end of the day, I like to think that I'm a good example to my kids. I think that. But the difference comes in as to whether or not my kids think that. Because, and this is something that we have seen more in previous generations than in those of us that are now in that, 30s group that are raising kids. It's very easy to, I guess, push kids out. The example in I guess this was in the Full Sticky Faith book, but he talks about how there were always the parents' table at family gatherings, and then there was the kids' table. And there was just this idea of, in our mind as parents, we see everybody as together, but in the kids' mind, they see something very different. And as we're going through life, as we face struggles, as we face challenges, the difference in whether or not our kids see our faith is whether or not we include them in some of those age-appropriate conversations. If we push our kids to the background and we shelter them from those tough times and those hard things that we go through as Christians, then are they going to see our faith for what it really is? And that's hard to do. It's hard to let your kids in and be vulnerable. But at the same time, that's one of those things that can really make a difference. Like a bath, huh, Ben? All right, so we're going to get what our kids think we are, and that's for better or for worse. In the conversation in the book, he brings up the idea of being on trial for our faith. Is there enough external evidence? Can people on the outside look in and see that our faith is strong enough that we could be convicted of being a Christian? And that's kind of a sobering thing to think through. Like, I wouldn't want to be on trial in front of everybody, but I'd like to think that I would be able to be convicted. But are we showing that? Hey, there's some Wildmans.
Do addition.
All right, good deal. I'm glad you guys got to join us. So here's a question for parents. As parents, what are some of the things that you're doing that show your kids your faith? Some things that you demonstrate your faith with to your children. Can you think of some good examples?
I want to say something about like music. I mean, music is so important. Kids are always wanting to listen to something, and it's like, I'm sorry, we're going to change channel. I don't like that. And they know it's going to be on Christian, KLRC when I'm in the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So, because if it's not going to glorify God, then why are you going to listen to it?
Yeah.
And, I've always told my kids, because they're getting to be teenagers, and I'm started telling them something that got me when I was younger was, if Jesus came back right now, would you be ashamed of where you're at, of what you're doing? And that makes them stop. Oh, okay. If he came back right now, no, I don't want him to see what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And just showing them the example of, what you listen to matters. What you put into your body, physical or mental, is going to affect what comes out. I mean, that's just the way it is. And there's a few times that it bothered me at the time, but Harry pointed out, like, if I had been like in my truck, for example, the antenna is horrible. The only stations that I can pick up is country, which is kind of fitting because it's an old rusted up truck and that's what country songs are about. But I can't get KLRC in my truck. So if I've been driving the truck for a day or so, Carrie will notice, or at least at one point she did, notice that my attitude was not what it should be. And she called me out on it. She's like, you need to stop listening to that kind of music. Like, oh, I didn't really think about that, but yeah, you're right. And that it affects you. So yeah, showing that to your kids, that's definitely something you can do. Does anybody else have anything?
You know, well, one thing about that was the kids, when they were younger, they knew when mom was in a bad mood because KLRC was not on the radio. I can't listen to Christian music when I'm in a bad mood, especially when I'm really mad. And when they pointed that out to me, it's like, okay, we got to change that. So I'd listen to it even if I was in a bad mood.
I love it. Yeah, well, your music affects you. That's one of those things. Like I think I've gotten more speeding tickets listening to Metallica than anything else. But that's just life.
So, one of the big things that I believe is important, and this comes up in some other stuff. It's one of the three keys that Flavio Yakeley, in his book Why They Left, points out, looking just at kids in churches of Christ, what it looks like, and three things that kids who remain faithful had. And one of those big things is they see their parents actively involved at church, not just attending and being there, but actively involved. And so this is one of the things that Karen and I believe very deeply, that when we are doing things, Ben is with us.
Yeah.
Ben is never an excuse for us not to do things. Now, he doesn't always enjoy it. This afternoon, he was not thrilled when I picked him up from school that we had to go to church and make Bible class bags. He's not always thrilled to have to go to Monday night for the Master, but it is important to us that he is with us when we do those things and involved in ways that he can be to help us in those things, because it is important for us that he sees us doing those kinds of things, because that's part of what it looks like to be faithful, is to not just be filling a pew, but to actively be working and doing things.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have to be including our kids in those things so that they see what's going on. They see that it's more than just what we say, but that our actions match our words. And kids can pick up on fakes pretty quickly, and they really do. All right, so this one's for the kids. What are some ways that you see your parents' faith? So what are some ways that you see their faith?
Well, one of the ways I see my mom's faith is that she goes and does some of the youth events with me as well.
I love that. Like, and I'm glad that you love that too, because I would be willing to bet at some point you may not, but I'm glad that you love it and appreciate it now, because it really does mean a lot that she's willing to do that.
I have a mom that makes the time to read the Bible every night before we go to sleep.
I love it. That's one of the things that we've done off and on, depending on, the age group of our kids, what we would do. We always tried to incorporate some sort of Bible reading in there. That's awesome. We've got some different storybook Bibles that we read through with the boys, and Evan and Levi love it. In fact, if we're busy and we're tired or whatever, and we just tell Levi, we're just going to skip the story tonight, he says, no, we're on this page. I want to read the rest of this story. And it's just so neat. Even though he's read it, we've been through each of the books 2 or 3 times now. He knows what's coming. He knows the story, but he wants to read it, and he makes sure that we know that he wants to read it. So yeah, that's awesome. All right, so there's a lot, and I don't necessarily want to spend too much time on this, but that it really is one of the key things in the study that they did, as far as, what are some things that we can do to increase the faith of our children. Like, it really was the number one thing. If you're involved in church, your kids are more likely to be faithful as adults. That was the single thing that you could do. Now, there is no, he talks about it as a silver bullet. There is no, guarantee that if you do this, then your kids will turn out this way. But if there's one thing that you can do to help make things better, that you can do to help make your kids more faithful in the long run, it's to be active in church. And the active is the key, as Jared pointed out. So that has to be a priority for us as parents to be doing it, but also for, as kids, you have that responsibility that you can make a difference on your parents. I'll put it that way. If there's something going on and we're busy and we don't want to participate in an event for some reason, whatever it is, and we had told the boys about it ahead of time, most of the time they'll call us on it. Like, they'll point out, like, hey, aren't we supposed to be here? And they remember that. So kids, pay attention to what's going on. And if you want your parents to be involved, tell them. Because especially as you get older, and especially as you get in those teenage years, your parents are going to try to give you space. And that's a good thing. But at the same time, if you want them involved, let them know that.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah, please do.
So I just want to say, like, as a parent, it's hard for me being single sometimes and the other one not going to church at all.
Yeah.
When I don't have the boys, So I'm thankful that so much of my mom's family was raised at Farmington. Because if I didn't have that, then, I wouldn't be going to church probably, So I'm thankful that my kids can have other family members also to look up to that are members of the church. So I feel like that helps also.
Oh yeah, and that's one of the things that the book really does a good job bringing about. And this material will hit it some, but it's not just up to the parents. Like, if you've already raised your kids, or if you don't have any kids, or even if you do have kids, you can still be an influence on other people. That's why I really want this class to be something that everybody participates in. This is not an FYG class. This is a class that will benefit the youth group. Absolutely. This is a class that I want our teens' input in. But ultimately, if we're going to make a difference in the lives of our kids, it's going to take all of us, because we can't do it alone. I mean, and whether there's one parent at home or two parents at home, it's still hard. So the more people that we can expose our kids to that share our faith, that are active in faith, the better off it's going to be. So yeah, absolutely. So I guess one other thing I want to go ahead.
Just going off of that, going back to the Flavel Yakeley numbers, Flavel Yakeley says that it takes 3 adults who are not your parents to have meaningful relationships with 3 adults who are not your parents, as one of those other things. But like, it's a wider net of adult influence.
And in fact, the Sticky Faith says 5 or 6. They've even got a higher number than what Flavel does. So regardless, it takes more than just your parents to raise faithful kids. So that's kind of all of our responsibility. Okay, so one other thing I want to touch on.
Hey, Robert, can I jump in before you move on?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks. So I was just going to say, going back to Jared's earlier point, I had parents who included us in everything. excuse me, everything that they did, they took us with them and they expected us to be involved in that too. So like if they signed up to prepare communion, like they didn't go do it and leave us at home. We went down, we helped them prepare communion. We were expected to do that. We weren't allowed to stay at friends' house on Saturday nights if they weren't going to be at church with us the next day. Because we're not missing church on Sunday morning. We're more than welcome to have friends spend the night with us on Saturday night because we'd love to take them to church with us on Sunday morning. But I mean, those expectations were set and, we're going to be involved. We're going to make it a point and a habit to be at church when the doors are open. And so those expectations were set and we knew exactly what was expected of us. And that we were going to be involved in everything that they were involved in.
Yeah, that's the kind of examples that we need to see. And this is why it's so important, not just for us as parents to be doing this stuff, but also it's something that other people need to be able to see that example and need to hear those kinds of stories. That way, when you're raising your kids and they don't like that they have to go to church on Sunday mornings or that they can't go to a friend's house or whatever that may be, it's good for them to know that, hey, this is the way that it was supposed to be. This is the way that it was for me. This is the way that it was for so-and-so. This is the way that Miss Gina always did it. Like they need to see that. They need to know that, it's not just my parents that are the crazy ones that are making us do all this stuff. So yeah, I think that's awesome. So I guess one last section that I want to touch on, just because we're almost out of time. If we don't want to pay for the Zoom software, they limit us to 40 minutes. So we've got about 4.5 minutes left. The book touches on how important marriages are and those relationships. Not that is, if you don't have a good marriage, that it's impossible to raise faithful kids. But that if they have that stability and that influence, that can be a big impact. So don't be discouraged about that section if it's not the way that it should be. And don't be discouraged if mosquitoes eat you alive either. It's just a good weight loss strategy. So try to focus on the positives. If this can be a benefit for you, then absolutely leverage that. So the last section, and this is, kind of one of the most important ones. What if you're not who you should be? What if your faith isn't where it needs to be? I mean, ultimately, none of us are going to sit back and go, I'm the Christian, like I'm the perfect Christian, and I want my kids to have faith that's, as good as mine. Like my hope for my kids is that it's better than mine, that I want to be better. I want to grow each day. I want to do better each day. So, ultimately, knowing how important our influence is on our kids, ultimately that should cause us to want to do better. Not discourage us, but encourage us to do better. So there is some responsibility that goes with that. And that's hard, but ultimately that's part of the territory of being a parent. So is there anything that anybody else wants to share that they do, or anything that has helped them in their spiritual walk that may be beneficial to others?
So I'm sorry we got on a little bit late. So I was not raised in a faithful family. They didn't go to church. I got invited to go on a hayride with friends, and then I just started going. They picked me up, they dropped me off. It was a free babysitter for my parents, but I was able to watch loving relationships. My parents didn't have the best relationship. I was able to watch respectful people. I was able to see lives in a way that I hadn't seen them, and that's what I wanted. And so when I was able to drive on my own, I was taking my sisters, I was going to church, and that's what drew me. So it is parents, but as a church family, we have to understand that I'm not my kids' only parents. We are all family, and I appreciate our church for doing things like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's something that we can do that really does make a difference. When you see kids that are out there in the congregation, out there in the pews, take time to try to make those connections and connect with them, because it really does make a difference. And hopefully, if this class continues to go the way that I hope it will, we're going to put some structure around that. We're going to have some tools and ways to kind of organize more of these type of relationships. So again, we're like pretty much out of time, but I really do thank everybody for being here. This is really important for our church, for our families, for our kids. Take the time, commit to doing this, and I promise you it will be well worth it. Everybody has a great night. I'm going to post this on YouTube. If you guys have anything that you want to share, feel free to text me, call me, whatever, and I'll add those thoughts to the video at the end as well. So I think we're good. Everybody have a great rest of your week.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.